If I started renovating a boat in 2026, I would do this first. Simply put, research. 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 I have two friends at work who already own a narrowboat. Luckily, they invited me to spend a day out on the canals with them. That day confirmed for me that this was what I wanted to do: buy a narrowboat. I looked into buying new, but sadly it was way above my budget. That only left second-hand narrowboats. I knew I would not get the perfect one, however, I still made a list of my ideal narrowboat. It went something like this: a reverse layout, that is when the kitchen is nearest the stern, a large kitchen area, I love to cook, a separate bathroom as opposed to a walk-through, a dinette, so a seating area where I could work and eat. Just as important to me was a relatively clear roof space on top of the narrowboat. What I actually got was quite different. The bedroom is at the stern, the kitchen is in the middle, there's no dinette. However, it does have a separate bathroom and a relatively clear roof space. But I had already fallen in love with her, so none of this mattered. I recommend you try before you buy. However, if you're not as lucky as I was, I suggest you hire a boat for at least a day, but a whole week is better. There are a lot of ups, but as in life, some downs as well. Some downsides: you will need to find somewhere to empty your toilet, fill it up with water, and the nearest supermarket may be several miles away. So, what kind of research should you do? Well, this is what I did from the start, to try to decide what I wanted from a boat. You will need to do that for yourself. It will be different from me. I tell you all this to show you that you should not get fixated on what you're looking for in a second-hand narrowboat. You will need to compromise on your must-haves, your likes, and your not so important things you want on a narrowboat. Remember, as budget allows, you can change some of these things. I started by setting a strict budget, then looked at websites selling narrowboats within that budget. I knew I didn't want a low price boat that needed a lot of work, but I did want one I could almost move onto immediately. I picked out 5 or 6 boats I wanted to look at. 2 were at the same marina, so I asked to view them. Starting with my favourite from the pictures, I was so disappointed by the first viewing that I was about to leave. It needed a lot more work than I wanted to do. The second one, I had to be persuaded by the marina staff to view it. I trudged back to the second boat. I stopped in my tracks and caught my breath as I first saw Narrowboat Kate. I took a short shaky video at the time to remind me of what she was like. I just knew at that point that this was the boat I'd been looking for, and I had not even been inside yet. This again is an edited video of my first viewing of Narrowboat Kate. It was a strange feeling I had, the mix of the excitement, the nerves, the trepidation. I hope you get it too when you find your dream boat. Right, looking at a second boat. This one's called Kate. And we step down from the bow into the lounge area and stove, kitchen, quite nice, 4-ring stove and oven, side hatch and some cupboards, and a fridge. The cupboards underneath. And a little bathroom. Toilet, I believe, is a cassette. Got the sink. shower cubicle, compact, let's say, and bedroom area. Probably needs some heating. Storage cupboard for clothing, and the other side. Got my electrical bits. Stepping out onto the stern, bit of a squeeze because the hatch is still down. That's a view out the front. I don't remember my walk back to the marina office as I contemplated how am I going to afford this beautiful boat. You see, it was £8,000 above my strict budget. In the office I told them the bad news and they encouraged me to think about it. I believe they could see I really wanted to buy Narrowboat Kate. I stood outside for about 20 minutes going round in circles, trying to think about how I could make it work. I was again about to tell them no, when a chance encounter outside the office with the engineer from the famous Tooley's boatyard changed my mind. We talked for a few minutes and he advised me on what I should do. It was so obvious that I did feel a little stupid. However, I went back into the office and put in a slightly lower offer, and I would get a small boat mortgage on the balance after I'd put down the majority down as cash. To my immense delight and surprise, 20 minutes later my offer had been accepted. I was buying Narrowboat Kate. As a condition of the mortgage, I had to get a new survey done of her, even though one had been completed 6 months earlier. This involved lifting her out of the water into a dry dock so the surveyor could examine the hull. This was an added cost I would have to pay even if I hadn't bought her. There were no major issues, only advisories. The alternator was okay, but had some corrosion on the terminals. I had a new one installed. Once all the paperwork had gone through, I was able to pick up Narrowboat Kate and travel to my home mooring in another marina. In some of my early videos, where everything was new to me, I learned to operate the boat on my own for the first time while trying to film my first adventure. It was a great learning experience, and I found out a lot about how much I had definitely made the right choice. I also found out what was wrong with her, mostly little easily fixed things. However, there was one major thing I never picked up on until weeks after buying Narrowboat Kate. I had no mains power in her unless I plugged into a shoreline. It turns out the inverter, which was 20 plus years old, was broken. I needed to replace it. I decided to fit solar panels at the same time as a new inverter. In case you don't know, an inverter takes 12 volt supply, like a car battery, and converts it to mains voltage, 240 volts in the UK. I tell you all this so you know there will be extra expenses after you buy a narrowboat. I did have a budget for this and used most of it on lifting her out the water, having the survey completed, and fitting a new alternator, inverter and solar panels. I will be making another video on my power setup in the near future. I have many more things I want to change on Narrowboat Kate that I will only be able to do over time. Some of the bigger things: upgrade my battery bank to lithium ion, build a dinette to be fitted at the end of the kitchen, and soon I will be changing the blinds for thermal curtains. As for next week, stay tuned and subscribe as I trace a leak in my shower that is slowly sinking my boat.